Good morning, everyone. This is Christy Weaver-Harris with OSSE's Division of K-12 Systems and Supports. We're going to get started with the webinar in just a few seconds. We're waiting to give folks some more time to join. In the meantime, please feel free to download a copy of today's presentation in the handout section of GoToWebinar. And we'll get started in about 2 minutes. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us today for the April LEA Special Education Point of Contact monthly webinar. My name is Christy Weaver-Harris, Policy Manager in the OSSE's Division of K-12 Systems and Supports in the Office of Special Education. I'm going to be presenting today and standing in for Tiffany Ingram, who is on a much-deserved vacation. All right, as usual, today we'll go over some reminders and updates from Paul's team, or me, from our monitoring and compliance team, a couple quick update on SEDS, and some updates from our team in the Division of Student Transportation. We'll end with some general reminders and announcements, but first, you're going to hear quite a bit from me. I'm going to get started with some reminders related to special education policy. All right, let's get started with a reminder that the ESY certification deadline is Monday, May 2nd. Okay, I'm sorry about the noise in the background. I am in the office with the folks around me talking. All right, so the ESY certification deadline is Monday, May 2nd. ESY certification helps everyone prepare and plan for staffing and programming over the summer months, including helping OSSE anticipate transportation needs. I've addressed this in previous webinars, but I do want to come back to this issue of online or virtual ESY. I've gotten quite a bit of questions about it. Essentially, LEAs may only provide virtual ESY instruction in very limited circumstances. Since schools have returned to in-person instruction and the expectation is that students physically attend school, a student may participate in remote instruction or distance learning or virtual ESY only if the IEP team determines that the student's LRE is home instruction, if the school is temporarily closed due to COVID-19 and is providing remote instruction to all students, or if a student has an existing documented exemption from in-person instruction, so a COVID-19 medical exemption, if they're on like non-IDEA related home and hospital instruction, those sorts of things. Planning to provide an exclusively online program could amount to altering students' least restricted environments due to like administrative inconvenience. Those determinations around the student's LRE and how a student will receive instruction for ESY should be made on an individualized basis, part of the LRE and placement decisions that must be made by the IEP team when you determine eligibility for ESY. Also, like beyond individual student concerns, there may be implications related to your LEA's charter for public charter schools. It is my understanding, I spoke with PCSB about this, that charter schools may only provide virtual instruction as like a planned program if your charter authorizes you to provide such a mode of instruction. So if you have questions about that, I would encourage you to reach out to PCSB. I do want to acknowledge that, you know, there are many challenges being faced by LEAs right now, including planning for ESY. I understand it's really tough to get folks who want to work this summer. Everybody wants time off. We completely get it. So please reach out to OSSE if there's anything that we can do to support you in standing up your ESY program and maybe working with other LEAs to try to pool resources. We are happy to assist however we can. So please feel free to reach out to me. I would also encourage you to reach out to the Special Education Cooperative or to PCSB. But I did want to acknowledge that we cannot plan to provide an exclusively online ESY program for this summer. So here again are the required tasks and due dates for ESY for this year. Please make sure you work with your LEA's data manager to get the ESY calendar entered into eSchool Plus. Again, I want to highlight that last task that's listed here, which is documenting ESY attendance. For charters to receive ESY funding, the student must have an ESY attendance status of partially attended or attended in the ESY attendance module in SLED. The ESY attendance status must be completed within 5 business days after the ESY program ends for the LEA, consistent with OSSE's LEA data management policy. And remember, that's just a one-time indicator of general ESY attendance. If you need access to SLED, please contact your LEA data manager or email sled.info@dc.gov. I'm going to talk a little bit about closing out the current school year. I know it's only April, but we are approaching the end of the school year. So here are some recommended action items for LEAs to begin closing out. The first item is to complete reevaluations and annual IEP team meetings that are due over the summer. I know it has been tough getting assessments and evaluations completed this year, so I do encourage you to be planning as far ahead as possible for those evaluations and assessments that may need to be ordered over the summer or at the beginning of the next school year. Here I also want to give you some reminders around flexibilities that are available to you around completing assessments and evaluations. Assessments must be completed by trained and qualified personnel. Does not always have to be provided by the school psych. You can use your recovery funding to provide training to teachers, to other educators, to other folks in your building who are qualified to provide certain assessments. If you want more information on that, please feel free to reach out to me. I have some members on my team who are well versed in this and will be happy to provide assistance or give you some ideas. We also want to make sure that you are documenting activities and SEDS consistent with the data management policy, which requires you to document updates within 5 business days. So this includes ensuring completion of service logs, progress reports, and importantly, completing a summary of performance for every student who is graduating with a diploma. I also want to direct you to ensure that you are documenting things as appropriate, consistent with OSSE's entry and exit guidance, which will help get those kids off of your roster at some point over the summer at the beginning of the next school year. I want to encourage you to consider summer staffing, which again, I want to acknowledge again that that's not an easy feat for anyone this year. But LEAs do need to ensure that someone's around to receive and respond to records requests and support LEA obligations related to early childhood transition. So attending transition conferences and making sure initial evaluations are completed for children who are transitioning from IDEA Part B and children under the age of 6. Turning to the upcoming school year, I want to remind you to check out OSSE's Start of School information and trainings available over the summer. That website always has a wealth of information and should be launching soon. Please ensure that you are submitting TRFs for the upcoming school year in a timely manner to ensure that you're doing your part to ensure the timely provision of student transportation services for eligible students. As usual, I want to encourage you to conduct an audit of your LEA SEDS users and to make sure the right folks do and do not have access to student records and SEDS. This can also include a review, an audit of your users that are listed in eSchool Plus, your eSchool Plus points of contact. If you are a special education point of contact in eSchool Plus, then you probably already know this, but that is how OSSE pulls those lists of POCs to communicate with you about various things throughout the school year. So, for example, when I send the ESY memo every year, I send it to specific POCs that are provided in eSchool Plus. That is one of the best ways to ensure that you are getting the information that you need from OSSE. One of the other ways is to make sure that you are reading the LEA look board, because we do try to put everything in the LEA look board that may be directly emailed to certain POCs. I also want to encourage you to work with your LEA data manager to ensure that you have a smooth switchover to the 2022-23 school year. You need to have your school year calendars entered in SEDS. Make sure you're working with your LEA data manager to make sure that those data systems are being switched over, because you won't have access to student records for the upcoming school year until you switch over your SIS. And I know a lot of the time that may be out of your control. You may be hounding your LEA data manager to get the SIS switched over so that you can get access in SEDS. Please let us know if you need any assistance with that. Our Division of Data Assessment and Research and our Division of our Chief Information Officer would love to support your LEA in getting those systems switched over as quickly as possible after the end of your ESY periods or the end of your summer school. All right, some more action items to help you prepare for the next school year. Oops, hold on. All right. Those include planning for training and professional development that could occur over the summer. During next month's webinar, the Office of Special Education will be providing information on a variety of trainings that will be available for LEAs and educators over the summer, including trainings to support implementation of the new Chapter 30 special education regulations that are expected to be effective by July 1, 2022. So they will be in place for next school year. I want to encourage you to consider when and how you will update LEA policies and procedures in accordance with those new regulations, and some of our trainings will help you accomplish that work. Some of our trainings are geared specifically to what practices and what policies need to be updated at the LEA level. LEAs will also want to monitor student enrollments. I encourage you to use the Early Access to Students with Disabilities data application, which I will talk about in a minute, and prepare for and document the first provision of specialized instruction for students under the age of 6, consistent with our requirements in data reporting in accordance with the DL v. DC lawsuit. All right, let's talk about early access. So on April, I believe, 27th of this year, the Early Access to Students with Disabilities data application will go live with student information for the upcoming school year. This is a click application that OSSE provides to give LEAs access to information for pre-enrolled students with disabilities after the end of the current school year and prior to the beginning of the next school year when LEA systems switch over to the upcoming school year. A major hurdle for our data systems statewide is that we can only operate within one school year at a time. So you may need to be preparing for the upcoming school year, but you cannot access that information yet. So in order to support LEAs in planning for the upcoming school year, we provide these early access applications, and one of them is Early Access to Students with Disabilities data. If you're unfamiliar with CLIC, this is an application that's within CLIC, a data visualization tool. It's a data visualization tool that is used to develop interactive reports and dashboards. You can create charts and graphs. You can download information into an Excel spreadsheet. And the user's role in eSchool Plus will determine if you have access to a particular OSSE CLIC application, including the Early Access to Students with Disabilities application. So this is available to a variety of LEA points of contact. Again, reach out to your LEA data manager if you need to update your role in eSchool Plus to ensure that you can have access. And again, we anticipate that this application will go live on April 27th. And it's updated daily to show changes in enrollment so that you can be planning as accurately as possible. But as always, I will remind you, if you are downloading information from that system, you will want to delete those downloads on a regular basis, as student enrollments may change and those downloads could include student information to which you should not have access anymore. Again, if you're unfamiliar with the early access application, it provides a number of data points for students that we pull from SLED and SEDS, including disability information, eligibility and IEP start and end dates, special education hours and related services information, dedicated aid needs and hours, and transportation information. Last year's version included 2 years of transportation eligibility information to account for impacts during COVID-19 distance learning. But since we returned to in-person instruction, this year's version will only have transportation information for the most recent school year. So you won't see 2 school years of transportation eligibility in there this year. To access the early access CLIP application, you first need to obtain SLED credentials and then request access, request and receive CLIP access from OSSE consistent with your POC role as indicated in eSchool Plus. We have a webinar on this that's linked here if you need more information. You can also feel free to submit an OSSE support tool ticket to help get access to the applications that you need. All right. And finally, OSSE has relaunched the Early Childhood Working Group. We want to talk to LEAs that serve early childhood populations, so our 3 to 5-year-olds. We want to talk to you about transition of students from IDEA Part C, access to data systems and student records, the child outcome summary process, and early childhood literacy and strategies for students with disabilities. This is like a wide array of topics, but we do envision this being a long-standing working group. And our goal here is really to discuss and understand pain points and identify solutions for your challenges so that we can help make these a little bit easier processes for you. So the first topics that we're tackling are transition from IDEA Part C and access to student records, especially over the summer and before those transition students are enrolled in the current school year. And that is the topic that we will be discussing at the second meeting on May 4th. I strongly encourage you to attend this meeting. We will be going over a new process for LEAs to access student records for these students over the summer. OSSE is going to be implementing a new process. We're going to be giving you access to these records earlier, but I very, very strongly encourage you, if your LEA serves 3 to 5-year-olds, please attend this meeting. The registration link is right here on the slide. I will try to drop it in the chat again. I also encourage you to bring your data manager to this meeting because it will have impacts on your data systems. If you have questions about this, you can reach out to me or Dawn Hilton, who's our 619 coordinator, at dawn.hilton1@dc.gov. And let me see if Dawn is able to join. All right. On behalf of Dawn, I'm going to be presenting some monitoring compliance reminders and updates. All right, okay. So OSSE will conduct a second child outcome summary data checkpoint. To prepare for this checkpoint, LEAs should confirm the accuracy of all child outcome summary or COS records for children currently enrolled in a pre-kindergarten special education program and children who will exit the program at the end of the 21-22 school year by June 30th, 2022. As a reminder, COS is a process for states to measure the progress of children ages 3 to 5 at the beginning and end of their special education programs. The information gathered summarizes a child's functional skills in 3 specific areas. And the purpose of this checkpoint is to ensure that your LEA has, 1, created a record in DC CATS for every child currently enrolled in your pre-K special education program and submitted entry data for those children in DC CATS and has submitted exit data in DC CATS for every child who is no longer enrolled in your pre-K program at the end of the 21-22 school year. During this checkpoint, OSSE will compare all available student information in SEDS to the student records in DC CATS and make sure each child is accounted for and that data is being collected. Later, this information is reported to the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs as part of OSSE's annual federal reporting or the annual performance report for APR. COS exit data is extremely important as it is a process used to measure the overall effectiveness of special education programs and services for preschool age children as determined by OSSE and OSSE. When gathering exit data, it's important for a team of individuals who are familiar with the student to meet, to share, and review the data regarding the student's progress in the 3 outcome areas. 60 days prior to the last day of a child's pre-K program, your LEA should gather information about the student and submit the exit data in DC CATS. Exit data is also required for any children who turned age 6, who are no longer eligible for special education services, or who moved out of state, are now homeschooled, or attend a private school. Some COS tips here. When creating a new record or submitting entry and exit data in DC CATS, there are a few things that you should remember. First, each child can only have 1 COS record in DC CATS. When creating a new record, if you receive an alert indicating that the student already exists in a different LEA, your DC CATS administrator should submit a student records transfer request. It's also important that LEA administrators remember to check your accounts for pending transfer requests. If DC CATS alerts you that the student already exists in your LEA, this means the student's record was prematurely closed, meaning exit scores were submitted during a previous school year. In this situation, please contact OSSE at the email address listed here at osse.cosfaq@dc.gov, and our team will unlock the record. Secondly, exit data must be collected in all 3 outcome areas, regardless of a child's disability, their identified areas of delay, or the specific goals and services listed on their IEP. And OSSE has determined that progress should be monitored in these 3 specific areas for every student enrolled in a preschool special education program. Lastly, if a student unexpectedly withdraws from your LEA before you can gather exit data, your LEA must still complete or close the record in DC CATS. To complete this process, your LEA must open the student record in DC CATS, begin the process for submitting exit data, and then indicate that you do not have exit data and explain why you don't have exit data. So you would put in a justification for why exit scores were not obtained, such as the student unexpectedly withdrew before we could gather exit data. Once those steps are complete, then you submit your responses. And again, for any assistance with this, please contact osse.cosfaq@dc.gov. So this second item related to pre-K students that we're going to discuss today pertains to the pre-K spring and summer referrals for special education. With the acceptance of lottery seats for the 22-23 school year and the completion of enrollment documentation, public charter LEAs are responsible for accepting all referrals for special education and completing the initial evaluation and IEP process for pre-kindergarten students. DC Strong Start and the district's is the district's early intervention program, and DC Public Schools, their early program, early stages, will most likely be the primary agencies that LEAs will receive referral notifications from for newly enrolled students. So Strong Start will reach out if they know that a student is enrolled in a charter school for the upcoming school year, and DCPS early stages will reach out if a student starts the transition process with them, but that they learn through that process that the student has enrolled in your LEA. We're going to discuss the referral types on the next slide, but before we move on, I want to remind LEAs to submit an OSSE support tool ticket the moment that you are notified of a child's referral. We have worked really hard to identify a process that will allow LEAs to gain access to student records prior to the official switchover for your LEA's student information system. And again, to learn more about that process, please register for the May 4th Early Childhood Working Group session. That's where we will go over that process and provide more information on it. It's very, very important if you have time to please attend. All right, over the next few months, LEA should anticipate the receipt of the following types of referrals. Part C to be transition referrals. Those are students who are transitioning, who are aging out of early intervention services. Strong Start will send a meeting invitation to LEAs, and it's expected that a representative from your LEA participates in the transition meeting. Additionally, LEAs are responsible for completing the initial eligibility determination and, if appropriate, IEP prior to the child's 3rd birthday. At the time of a child's C2B transition meeting, parents are given an option to extend their child's early intervention services through what is called the extended IFSP option. When a child ages out of the Part C extended IFSP option, an exit transition meeting is held. And again, Strong Start will send a meeting invitation to LEAs. And again, it is expected that LEAs will attend that transition meeting. LEAs are responsible for completing the IEP prior to the beginning of the upcoming school year. And again, for public charter schools, this is students who have completed the registration process for your LEA for the current school year or the upcoming school year. And I know that it can be hard to know who has completed the registration process for the upcoming school year. We determine this through My School DC data. The last referral type I'd like to talk about is the Part B child find referrals that are forwarded from early stages. An LEA may receive these referrals at varying stages of the initial eligibility and IEP process. And again, this is when early stages starts the process or receives a child and then learns that that child has enrolled in your LEA. So LEAs are expected to acknowledge the receipt of each transferred referral and complete the remaining steps of the referral and initial evaluation processes within the initial evaluation timeline. If an LEA receives a new referral that has not yet been acknowledged in SEDS, the date in which the LEA was notified becomes the new referral date. So I think that's everything that I had for C2B transition, for early childhood stuff. If you have any questions about that, please feel free to drop them in the questions box. I will take a look at those once I get through these next couple of slides that I am presenting for Karen Morgan Donaldson. So I'm going to go over some upcoming monitoring and compliance activities. This slide outlines all monitoring and technical assistance in the area of IDEA Part B compliance for the remainder of the current school year. The initial report for secondary transition requirements monitoring was released yesterday, April 19th, and the reevaluation initial monitoring report will be released next week, where LEAs are asked to validate their data within DC CATS. In a couple slides, I'm going to review what that process looks like, but first, let's review the overall monitoring process and the related timelines. So this slide provides an overview of the timeline for a correction of noncompliance. All right, first, OSSE releases initial findings reports in DC CATS. This report provides LEAs to all proposed findings of noncompliance, and you have 30 days to verify the data and or make any appeal for proposed findings. At the end of the 30 days, OSSE monitors will review any evidence that LEAs uploaded in DC CATS, and if the evidence demonstrates the LEA was in fact not non-compliant or demonstrates that you were compliant, then a finding will not be issued. All other proposed findings will become final findings. This begins the 365-day timeline. So once findings are issued, LEAs have 90 days to complete Prong 1 in DC CATS. And once the Prong 2 report is populated in DC CATS, LEAs have 30 days to engage in the Prong 2 process. Prong 1 and Prong 2 must be completed within the 365-day timeline. So as discussed in the previous slide, LEAs have a 30-day window to clarify any areas of identified noncompliance. During this time, LEAs have the opportunity to request an appeal. And an appeal can be granted if an LEA can demonstrate that the noncompliance did not occur by providing evidence in the form of uploaded documentation. Documentation can be in various forms depending on the report and the area of noncompliance. If you have any questions about that, please reach out directly to your LEA monitor. And please note that appeals can only be requested during the 30-day corrections window. So to back up a little bit, we're going to talk a little bit about what Prong 1 and Prong 2 entail. Once the 30-day correction period is closed, the 365-day timeline does begin, as we discussed. In exercising its monitoring responsibilities, OSSE, as the SEA, must ensure that when it identifies noncompliance with the requirements of IDEA Part B, the noncompliance is corrected as soon as possible, but in no case, no later than 1 year after the identification of the noncompliance. Oh, goodness, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that it had exited presentation mode. Hold on one second. There we go. Sorry about that, guys. So in no case can we go longer than a 365-day timeline. OSSE uses a two-pronged approach when verifying the correction of noncompliance. Prong 1 is where the LEA corrects individual student level noncompliance. The action step for LEAs here is that the LEA uploads necessary documentation in the noncompliance report in DCCATS to demonstrate that the student level noncompliance has been corrected. Prong 2 is where the LEA demonstrates that it is now correctly implementing the specific regulatory requirement generally across its program. So this action step here is for the LEA to identify student files and enter student name and USI information in the Prong 2 report in DCCATS. So OSSE does Prong 2 monitoring on generally more students, the student files that you identify, to ensure that the LEA has practices and processes in place to address the deficiency of the regulatory requirement. Both Prong 1 and Prong 2 must be completed within 365 days. Findings that go past this timeline become findings of long-standing noncompliance, which affects both OSSE and the LEA's IDEA annual determination. Once your LEA completes Prong 1 in DCCATS, your LEA's Prong 2 report will open and will populate the number of files that you need to submit. This chart provides the breakdown for how many files are required per the number of files flagged for noncompliance. So if you have 1 to 5 files that have been flagged for noncompliance, you only need to submit 1 student file for Prong 2. Up to, if you had 20 files that had initially been flagged for noncompliance, then you must submit 5 student files for review as part of the Prong 2 process. And how exactly do you complete Prong 2? So you identify the student files that we will review. And the files for submission, they must be newer than the reporting period that was previously monitored. So they need to be more recent student files. The example here is if your LEA was flagged for an untimely initial eligibility during quarter 2, which was October to December, you need to identify student files where the eligibility occurred after January 1. And again, this is so that we can monitor to make sure that you have a program in place that ensures that you are addressing this area of noncompliance, generally speaking. And then the second step is to provide that student information to your OSSE monitor to review in DCCATS. Again, you're going to enter the student name and USI into the Prong 2 report. Email your LEA monitor to inform them that you've completed Prong 2, because DCCATS will not alert your monitor for you. And then once OSSE reviews the student record to confirm timeliness, the OSSE monitor will upload the student's final eligibility report and approve the closeout of the Prong 2 process. Again, this is your LEA's opportunity to demonstrate the work that you have done in the identified area of noncompliance from like a programmatic standpoint. And if you have questions about what students to use for Prong 2, you should review your LEA's performance and planning report and SLED. That'll tell you who had an eligibility, for example, consistent with the example I gave earlier, it'll tell you who had an eligibility within the appropriate time frame. And if you want to learn more about how to enter student files for your OSSE monitor to review as part of the Prong 2 process, we do have a video that provides a DCCATS tutorial on how to identify students in Prong 2. All right, if you have any questions about that, please feel free to drop them in the questions box. I'm going to take a look while some other folks talk for just a second. But if you have any questions, go ahead and enter them in and I will answer what we can today. But if it's related to monitoring and compliance, it's likely that I will be taking it back to Karen for her to address either separately or in next month's webinar. So now I'm going to turn it over to Rita to talk a little bit about SEDS.
Thank you, Christy. And I think you just popped out of presentation mode. Yep. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rita Larkins with the Office of the CIO. Just wanted to remind everyone about the LEA engagement session that is happening tomorrow from 1 to 2:30. If you haven't had an opportunity to register or to share that with folks at your LEA, there is still time to do so. So we are encouraging folks to participate to really get your first look at the new SEDS 2.0 system that's coming on board, and also to provide some feedback for different things that we're thinking about for the system. So just as a reminder, if you haven't had an opportunity to do so, you can go to the OSSE training registration site and register for tomorrow's LEA engagement session for SEDS 2.0. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rita. Now I'm going to turn it over to our Division of Student Transportation for some updates.
All right, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Next slide, please. So as we begin the next school terms for ESY 2022 and next school term as well, 2022-2023, we want to make sure that your school is creating the calendars so you can submit transportation requests for the students. So you want to make sure that the bill times are correct. And also you want to make sure that you all have the correct cohort, because I know for some schools, LEAs are using only going 4 days a week. So that's a different cohort than the regular school term. And if you have any exception days, make sure you input those as well, and any holidays also. After you create that information, I would say contact the parents of the students that are eligible for ESY and the students that are eligible for transportation for next school year as well, just to verify if their addresses are the same. We know we have a mobile population, and many of our students move quite a bit throughout the school term. So we want to make sure that we're picking up the students from the correct location once the transportation correct before submitting the transportation form for the students. If not, that information is not correct, then that will impact route stability and also increase the possibility of route failure. So those are important to make sure that you contact the parents and also contact your school to make sure the data that you're going to input into TOTE is correct prior to submitting any transportation request forms. Next slide, please. And also, when we go through this process every year, we know that the first Monday in May is the certification deadline for ESY 2022. So that means calendars need to be submitted in the system, and also transportation requests need to be submitted for students who are eligible for ESY. Also, when you come to certification deadline for school year 22-23, that deadline is the first Monday in June. So we want to try to get all the students transportation requests in prior to any vacation time that you all may be taking for the summer. We just want to make sure that we have a majority of students in, because sometimes what happens is when people come back from vacation, they are out of those 20 days. So sometimes it may impact the students getting transportation the first days of school. So please make sure you're inputting your data in the school prior to those deadline dates. And as always, if you need to get in contact with us, you can reach us at 202-576-5520 or email us at dot.data@dc.gov, and we will respond to your request or your concerns. Next slide, please. Okay, then we have this happen every year, new students to a LEA. So as LEA enrolls new students into new schools who are eligible for and require transportation services, we want to make sure that that's a smooth process. So LEAs can now utilize the 22-23 school year early access to students with disability data and click. So if you don't, have access to anything, please reach out to the data managers that has access to that application to prepare the information in order to submit transportation requests as soon as possible once the student enrolls at an LEA. If that student is not available within your LEA, even though the student may have access, may be eligible for transportation, we are not able to submit transportation to that student becomes fully under your LEA within SEDS and everything. So so that will impact if this process is broken at any time. Just understand that that we have up to 10 business days prior to ensure school services begin on the first day of school, and all of its TRFs are processed on a rolling basis according to our policy. So at the beginning of the school year, we will reimburse for transportation because of the delay. Sometimes can happen when students transfer from one school to another, but throughout the school year, we don't reimburse for those for those issues when you once a student transfers to another school. But at the beginning of the school year, we will because we know it's normally like a delay in those systems when that occurs. So we do have the reimbursement link here embedded inside the slide as well if you need to get those reimbursement documents. Next slide, please. And requirements to pause transportation. We do have this happen from time to time. If you do have any students who parents may have, something may occur for the student, so they won't have to use transportation for a certain amount of time. You could just temporarily suspend transportation. You can notify us at dotcriticalinfo@dc.gov. Just put the student information in the system and let us know how long to pause transportation. But we will want to know that information as soon as possible if there is an emergency. We also require a 5-day business days notice to resume transportation. This allow us to reassess services, verify student information, and make sure we have the staff to cover the route efficiently once that student return. And if you have any questions or any adjustments, for services, just give our Parent Resource Center a call at 202-576-5000 to make any service adjustments for that student. And just make sure you provide the dates and the date for the service to resume at that time. Next slide, please. And again, here we're going to training dates for TOTE. If you need any training for TOTE, if you have any new coordinators at your school that need immediate training, just give us an email at dot.data@dc.gov, and we can schedule a time outside of these training dates. But we will be adding training dates past May. We normally go throughout the summer, so we give training all the time on TOTE. So these are the dates that we currently have. Today was April the 20th. We have one today, May the 4th, and also May the 18th. And we'll have other dates available as well prior to the next webinar. But again, if you have any coordinators that may have joined your team in between these dates and they need immediate access, just give us a phone call and we can schedule a one-on-one training with that particular person. If there are any questions, just put them in the chat and I'll answer them to the best of my abilities. Thank you again for your time, and all be safe.
Thanks, Doug. All right. So we have some additional reminders and announcements we're going to go through pretty quickly. So OSSE has partnered with a DC-based company, Opportunity Consulting, to offer LEAs individualized special education support services. So this contractor will be providing technical assistance to LEAs to support improvements in special education programming, instruction, and service delivery. So they have special education experts who are available to you at any point in time to provide, to answer questions on a wide range of topics, including individualizing lesson plans and determining appropriate accommodations for a student, implementing student support strategies, improving communication with families, correcting non-compliant practices within the LEA, and that's not specifically student level practices, that's more establishing policies and practices to support compliance within an LEA. They're also able to support, to help you with data-informed decision-making in the instructional design process. So root cause analysis, data analysis, and then also they're available to help you work on implementing policies with fidelity, policies and requirements with fidelities. I'm not sure, I see a question that just came through around, does the Opportunity Consulting Group provide PD for schools? I don't believe that they provide trainings as part of this. This is really more consultative services, but you can feel free to reach out to them at the email address listed here or leave a voicemail at the voicemail box, and a consultant will get back to you within 72 hours. When you are communicating with Opportunity Consulting, please do not send student PII to the email or the voicemail box, and compliance related questions should still be directed to OSSE via your LEA monitor. I also see another question around when is this available? It is available now and for the foreseeable future. So please make use of them. The folks that they have hired to do this work are excellent and have great experience in DC, very specific experience in DC. If you are looking for some support with your special education programming, I strongly encourage you to reach out to them. Please take advantage of this opportunity that we have made available. It's a very exciting opportunity. As usual, hold on. Sorry, thank you. My email is trying to remind me of things and is freezing my screen. All right, as usual, for information on OSSE's professional development opportunities that are available right now, please make sure that you have subscribed to the Teaching and Learning PD Bulletin. We encourage you to subscribe. It's a monthly bulletin, so that gives you information on upcoming professional development sessions, resources, and tips from fellow educators. You can also access the most recent Teaching and Learning PD Bulletin on our website via the link that is provided in this slide. There's also some professional development opportunities available through OSSE's Division of Early Learning. They provide monthly professional development opportunities for preschool staff, and these are shared in the Professional Development Information System, or the PDIS. To access those trainings, you can create an account and register for trainings at dcpdis.org. If you have an issue creating an account, please contact the Early Childhood Education Help Desk at ecehelpdesk@dc.gov or at the phone number that is provided on the slide. Jen Carpenter, would you like to present this slide?
Excuse me, Chrissy. Hi. Yeah, sure. The next virtual meeting of the Secondary Transition Community of Practice is going to be Friday, the 22nd from 10 to 11, and you can register using the link on the printout. I also wanted to just quickly preview for our next meeting, our May meeting. I'm going to be speaking about professional development opportunities specific to special education. And I really look forward to having the opportunity to circle back on how you might leverage both OSSE's professional learning opportunities around special education and then that ongoing technical assistance from Opportunity Consulting. So just kind of floating that out there for your planning, that there will be another Foundations of Special Education series launching in the summertime, and it might be a great way to take advantage of two streams of support together by working with our Opportunity Consulting. So just throwing that in there at the last minute, Christy. Oh yes, Secondary Transition Institute's coming up as well, May 17th through 18th, from 10 to 3 each day. So be sure to register. These are always great fun, great speakers, and great takeaways for serving our transition age youth. I encourage you to sign up for the Institute this year. It's going to be virtual, and it's going to be really centered on taking a more MTSS approach to secondary transition, so bridging the gap between secondary transition and college and career readiness for all students. We hope you'll sign up.
Great, thank you, Jen. All right, to recap a little bit of what we've talked about today, we want to make sure that LEAs are finalizing student ESY eligibilities no later than April 29th, 2022, in order to submit your certification by May 2, 2022. So also make sure you're finalizing your ESY calendars in SEDS no later than April 29th, and you're entering your TRFs for ESY no later than May 5th, 2022. You are also required to identify a summer special education point of contact for your LEA to be able to receive records requests and early childhood education transfer students, transition students. We are also asking you to please complete our survey, which is linked in the later slide. So we use those survey responses to help us develop the next month's survey, the next month's webinar. If you have missed a webinar, all of these are recorded and posted on our website for good or for bad. on the LEA Special Education Points of Contact Monthly Webinar Series page. You can watch previous webinars and download training resources and materials, including the PDFs of all of our slides. And the recording of this webinar and slides will be posted within the next week. Our next Special Education Point of Contact webinar is Wednesday, May 18th, 2022. Please feel free to register at the link provided. This is another meeting that I would strongly encourage you to attend. We're going to have a lot of information on trainings and resources that will be available over the summer. So please make sure that you are in attendance on May 18th. All right, here's our survey. It's a QR code, and you just hold your phone up and take the survey right there on your phone. It's really quick. While you guys are doing that, I'm going to go over a couple of questions that we got. Someone asked when the trainings regarding Chapter 30 will be available. So we will post trainings and materials as soon as the regulations are final. We anticipate that they will be final before July 1, but that is the latest date that they would be posted. We're waiting on approval from outside agencies. It's a little bit outside of our control to determine when the regulations will be final and published. They will be effective July 1. And the trainings that we provide for Chapter 30 will be both recorded, and we will provide them live at a time that makes sense. I'm saying that for educator schedules, that means I'm not going to try to provide trainings for LEAs in the middle of July when nobody is working. We will be posting, so we will make recorded trainings available for you to access at your leisure, and then we will have live trainings available so that you can participate and ask questions as you go along. We will also probably be doing some office hours to answer questions around Chapter 30 issues, so keep an eye out for that. And any trainings that we do, the materials will be made available for you to use. So we will do our best to provide like slide decks and resources for you to be able to repurpose in your start of school trainings when everybody comes back. I do want to thank everybody who sent me messages when my screen decided to close. I couldn't see it myself, so thank you for letting me know, and I'm sorry, you know, this is, we have the B squad this month. Tiffany will be back next month. Okay, somebody asked, who do you identify the special education point of contact? I would say, so this is not like a formal, you need to tell OSSE who this person is. I will say that for early childhood transition, you just need to make sure that somebody's responding to emails at the LEA. For early childhood transition, we will be using the preschool special education point of contact and the special education point of contact as primary POCs for those purposes. So just make sure that you have somebody designated in one of those roles who is available to answer questions. And I do see a question that says, if a pre-K4 student is found eligible in April, the data, what should you enter for exit data? You can enter the entry data for that student because they are newly entering the system, but you would not have time to be able to collect exit data, for example, if that student is turning 6. I do believe that that is correct. I will confirm that with Dawn Hilton and have her send an email back to you, and then we can also address it in next month's webinar. But I think those are all the questions that I see. There's a few other questions that came in. I will make sure that folks reach out to you directly about that. I've written them down so that we can circle back on it for y'all. If nobody else has any other questions, please make sure that you are completing the survey. We appreciate your feedback, good and bad, to help us improve these webinars going forward. And I will give you back 5 minutes of your time. Thank you for joining us this morning. Appreciate you navigating through some technical difficulties with me. Everybody have a great rest of your day.